Hey guys, what's up? It's Kevin for the win. We're back for another edition of Diablo 3. Today on the channel, we are taking a look at the Horde of the 90 Savages set armor for the Barbarian Class. This is one of those armors that I've always said is kind of overlooked and overshadowed because of the Whirlwind set. Here it is, Horde of the 90 Savages. 2-piece bonus, double the effectiveness of shouts. You deal double damage to feared, frozen, or stunned enemies. 4-piece bonus, each frenzy stack reduces damage taken by 6%. Frenzy lasts twice as long. 6-piece bonus powers up frenzy tremendously. So this set is basically revolves around shouts as well as using frenzy. Most of your damage is coming from frenzy. We're going to be using the Undisputed Champion belt. Frenzy gains the effect of every rune and deals 382% increased damage. It's up to 400% you can get on that. We're going to be using the Little Rogue and Slander as weapons here. Every time you spend primary resource, gain 6% increased attack speed damage and armor for 5 seconds. The effect stacks up to 5 times. Very helpful with this set since we attack a lot. We're using Compass Rose, Traveler's Pledge in conjunction with each other, really good, while moving damage take is reduced up to 50%, while standing still damage dealt is increased by up to 100%. So use that with Conventional Elements Ring, Mortrix Brace, that way we get Wrath of the Berserker, gains the effect of every rune, just to kind of cover all the bases so we can get even more damage and buffs out of this set. So I would recommend this particular build to run Frenzy. Okay, so for the skills, primary, Frenzy, obvious, Maniac, increased damage dealt while frenzied, Furious Charge, Merciless Assault, that way we could just get a little bit more tanky. Threatening Shout, Falter, enemies instead take increased damage, very helpful. Wrath of the Berserker, doesn't matter about the rune because we get all of them anyway. Warcry, Veteran's Warning, increased damage chance while under the effects of Warcry, or dodge chance, correction. So very important. Battle Rage, Bloodshed, Gather Rage, and periodically unleash it upon nearby enemies. Kind of a useful skill. You're not going to rely too heavily on this particular build with it. For the passives, Ruthless, Berserker Rage, Nerves of Steel, and Boon of Bulkaphos, because we are going to be using the Wrath of the Berserker, so why not get a little out of it? In the Knights Cube, absolutely mandatory, Bastions Revered. You need this for this build to work. Depth Diggers, and then a Band of Might. That's my recommendation. You must use Bastions Revered. That is mandatory, because if you try to do the Frenzy set without it, you're going to see that you do a significantly less amount of damage. This is where my Paragon is at. For the follower, honestly, the only thing I wouldn't even recommend Kane's Insight is just because I have so many different accounts that I have different followers I haven't optimized. Really, all you need on your follower is a Flavor of Time and a Nemesis Bracer, and then if you want, you could throw in like maybe a Sprawlders of Zakra, definitely run a Gold Skin. If you want, I would say on the helm, probably run a Broken Crown. Those are probably really the only particularly useful Emanate abilities. Obviously, Kane Insight if you're going to farm Nephilim Rifts for more Greater Rift keys. If not, you could go Sages set, so you could get more Death Breaths. I prefer Sages, but in this particular follower, I was farming for keys. So that's why I went that way. Today, for this showcase, we are going to do a Greater Rift 60, 65, 70, 75, and probably an 80, because you're going to see that you're going to be able to rip through enemies to shreds pretty much with this particular set, the way it's set up. So when you get into the Greater Rift, the first thing really you're going to want to do is just start using your Frenzy and just chopping things down. As you can see, as you start swinging your Frenzy, the Little Rogue Slander is going to go off in conjunction with Bastions Revered. I would recommend saving your shouts, in particular for when you're in large areas of mobs. Preferably, I would save them as you get higher up in the Greater Rifts with Elite Packs particularly, and then just shout there, and then use your Frenzy to chop things down. As you can see, the more times that you're attacking with Frenzy, the faster you're getting, the more bulky. For gems, my recommendation would be Bane of the Stricken. Since you are already attacking multiple times, you can stack very, very fast that bonus on that gem. I would recommend Bane of the Trap because we are using particular things that will slow down enemies. On top of that, Bane of the Trap naturally will give you built-in slow effect when it is max, or not max, but leveled up to level 25. Then my recommendation for the last gem is Simplicity Strength, because remember, Frenzy is a very basic attack, so you can buff this up. I would advise for people that are wanting to get super high leaderboard placement with this particular set armor that you invest in getting Simplicity Strength up first as high as possible, preferably level 80, will allow you to do greater riff 80 through 90 with ease, and then maybe you'll start to struggle a little bit at greater riff 100. Obviously, if you get that gem up to level 100, you probably will be able to do greater riff hundreds and highers with it. This particular set armor, when you fully optimize it, and we're going to talk about optimization sake here in a minute, will be able to probably push in a skilled player's hand. You should be able to do greater riff 135 solo, maybe even be able to push 136. Group of 4 that know what they're doing, you should have no problem doing greater riff 150s. Now, for optimization's sake, my recommendation would be on the helm, put crit hit chance 6.0%. For the gloves, my recommendation would be crit hit chance 6.0%, crit hit damage 50%, and I would also highly recommend, since you have to attack a lot with this particular armor anyway with basic attack, I would recommend attack speed at least 6.0%. Preferably 8.0% would be better because that's the fastest speed stat. Having those 3 things on your glove are just going to push your attack stat significantly high to begin with, so I definitely recommend that. And although some people may disagree with investing in critical hit chance, critical hit damage means you're going to be able to do more damage, and having a higher chance of being able to do more damage is never necessarily a bad thing. As you saw, we already speeded through greater riff 60 with ease. We just looked at the enemy and pop. Usually with this type of optimization, you're going to be able to pop things very fast. Another good thing, particularly about Horde of the 90 Savages, is that it's such a strong armor and so powerful that you actually don't need to invest in really that many augmentations. In fact, with this particular build that we're using right now, I think I might have only 1 or 2 augmentations on it. So that's one of the benefits here. Another benefit is, unlike Wrath of the Waste, which is the Whirlwind Barbarian set, which we have covered in case you need an overview of that, you could definitely check that out in our available playlist of Diablo 3, which has about 73 videos on it so far. Definitely check that out. You know, Wrath of the Waste is going to be about as quick, if not slightly a little bit quicker. This one kind of gives you a little bit more to play around with, and it's not just spinning around holding in one button. You have to actually think a little bit more, which is why I kind of prefer using Horde of the 90 Savages. I also feel like Horde of the 90 Savages doesn't need as much optimization. Case in point there, that was a 2-minute and 52-second clear time. All right, so greater of 65, it's going to be pretty much the same thing that we did before. When we get into the greater riff, use your Wrath of the Berserker just so you can get a little bit more attack stat out, and then just start using your Frenzy. Save your shouts for when you're near elite packs or mobs that seem like they're very tanky, and then shout away so you can do increased damage. And usually you'll do as you just saw here, where everything just explodes. Remember, the key to the set armor, because I know it's going to come up in the comments, because somebody will probably overlook Bastion's Rever in the Kanai's Cube and say, well, this isn't doing as much damage for me. What am I doing wrong? You have to use Bastion Rever, because Bastion Rever is really what pushes this particular set armor to its most optimal heights. Without it, you're not going to really be able to frenzy into things and just explode things all around. So very important to do that particular thing. In fact, I would say, really, if we had to compare speed times, I would say the way I have my particular Horde of the 90 Savages build optimized, it actually kind of does faster, maybe about 20 to 30 seconds faster than my Whirlwind Barbarian. The problem with Whirlwind Barbarian is it does really well up until about Greater Rift 70 without optimization, and then you're going to start noticing, if you don't have legendary gems optimized in there with like level 100 and every peach ancient legendary and your stats perfectly rolled, you're going to start to notice about Greater Rift 80 to 85 even, you're going to start struggling and you're not going to be able to clear things fast and you're going to be taking a lot of hits. Yes, you could obviously put the Amimbo's Pride in there, and that will help get Whirlwind to do a bit more damage, but Whirlwind, you know, is kind of one of those things where it takes a lot of optimization. Now, for further optimization for Horde of the 90 Savages, really there's only one way to go here. This is a set that cannot benefit from using Captain Crimson. So, and this is a set where cooldown reduction is not as important as, let's say, armors. So, my recommendation would be, really, I wouldn't even go resource costs here, but my recommendation, I would go 15% Frenzy. Wherever you can get 15% on Frenzy, do so. Anywhere that you could possibly buff Wrath of the Berserker, definitely do that as well. Then, if you still have, you know, desirable things where you can re-roll for it, then I would probably maybe look in investing in cooldown reduction, but you're really not going to need it because the only thing really you're going to be relying on a fast cooldown reduction for would be not so much your shouts, but your Wrath of the Berserker, which is not something that you're heavily relying on anyway in this build for a crutch. You could go resource cost reduction, but again, you're not going to be using up really any of your frenzy because, or not frenzy, but your fury, because you are already, you know, attacking things with your primary resource generator, that being frenzy. So definitely, I would not really recommend that. If anything, I'd say just buff up your strength and then buff up your frenzy where possible. And then let's say you have desirable rolls. Then if you have time for cooldown reduction to just make maybe Wrath of the Berserker get a little higher up, yeah, definitely try to go that way. But really, this is one of the few set armors, particularly for the Barbarian, where you don't have to rely on cooldown reduction or resource cost reduction because it's just much more simplistic because of how much you're going to be attacking only really with Frenzy and then just using Threatening Shout, which has pretty much a very fast cooldown anyway in general, so you could definitely go that route. You know, you could run if you wanted to for cooldown sake, since you're attacking a lot anyway, go Aqua Swiftness, but Simplicity, Strength, Bane and Stricken, Bane and Trap are just kind of going to do a lot more for you as you go higher up in the Greater Rifts and you know, Rift Guardians start attacking or taking more hits and tanking. That was a clear time of 3 minutes and 19 seconds, Greater Rift 65, which is Torment 14 difficulty. Now we're going to move on to a Greater Rift 70. Now, in terms of Horde of the 90 Savages, where exactly does it stand on leaderboard placement? Well, when it comes to Barbarian, unfortunately, it's really only about Whirlwind Barbarian. That's the particular set armor that everybody pretty much loves to rock and try to dominate the leaderboards with. In fact, looking at leaderboards this particular season of Diablo, that being Season 23, obviously the PTB just went live, which is testing out now stuff for Season 24 of Diablo. I actually discussed on Monday's video, which that's available in the playlist, where we covered the Ina's mantra and what it means for its buffs that it's getting, that Season 24 is looking kind of interesting. Barbarian, fortunately, is not getting hit with anything, or is not getting anything buffed. Ina's mantra, which is the monk armor, which uses Mystic Ally, is getting a significant bump. People are going to be playtesting that now to see. I'm keeping a very close eye on that because I think Ina's mantra is one of those interesting armors that definitely need a buff. Unfortunately, if you are a Crusader player in particular, or a player of Necromancer and use Masquerade in the Burning Carnival, which a lot of people do for Necromancer, those particular armors are going to be seeing some significant nerfs in Season 24. In particular, the 4-piece bonus, I believe it was, or the 2-piece bonus of the Valor set, which is the one that uses Fist of the Heavens and Heaven's Fury. The 2-piece bonus now can only stack up to 3 times, which changes things up tremendously compared to what it was before with that. Subsequently, the 6-piece bonus for Masquerade of the Burning Carnival's Bone Spear damage has been decreased in the amount of % of damage that it dishes out. The reasoning behind this was kind of very similar to how Mundanugu and the Gears of Dreadland set from Season 23 were nerfed, is that the Valor set and the Masquerade of the Burning Carnival set was overperforming for multiple seasons in Diablo 3. So developers felt in a need to kind of get people to play other things and to experiment and to branch out into other armors. They would nerf the power of those things, and they would also buff, obviously, Ina, which pretty much not too many people use. I very rarely have run into an Ina build for the Monk online. If anything, for Monk, the only thing I've really seen online is Patterns of Justice and Suoku, and the occasional Uliana set, but very rarely even Uliana. So it should be interesting. And obviously, if you're looking at leaderboard placement for Season 23, it's been dominated. It was like Whirlwind Barbarian and Valor Crusader, because those are the things that really didn't get hit. I do have a theory. Obviously, we have not Season 22, I was going to say. We have Diablo 2 Resurrected, which is coming out on September 23rd of this year on all platforms. As I mentioned before, we're definitely going to be covering Diablo 2 on the channel, Resurrected. I'm looking forward to jumping into a very classic game, remastered. Definitely will be focusing on set builds and whatnot, and so on and so forth for that when that game drops. Jury's still out exactly as to which platform I'm going to get it on. Unfortunately, from what I've read, the Nintendo Switch platform does not support 8-player co-op, as opposed to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, PlayStation 4, Xbox One. So definitely, that's already kind of a strike for the Switch. You get the portability of Diablo wherever you feel like playing it, but at the same time, you're not going to be able to play online with that many people, which is kind of a downside. So I don't know. Like I mentioned before, I have now a gaming PC. So if I can play like Diablo 2 Resurrected offline on my gaming PC and then also be able to play it online without having to pay for like the Nintendo Switch subscription, that's definitely something that is a bit more appealing to me at this current moment. So I'm kind of leaning towards Diablo 2 Resurrected on the PC because I think that's just going to give me better range of play, so to speak. However, I'm not too familiar with playing on mouse and keyboard yet. Still kind of getting used to that type of concept. Me being a console player all my life, it's kind of a little bit of a high learning curve there, even though you get more range of movement and everything. Okay, so that was level 70 Greater Rift, 3 minutes and 59-second clear time. And this is not fully optimized. Keep that in mind. So even optimized, we'd probably be able to do like 2 or 1 minute. Fully optimized means like every piece is ancient legendary. Legendary gems are augmented into it at level 100 or higher. Now, since Season 23 of Diablo is almost over, what I would say is if you're planning to play Horde of the 90 Savages, let's say in Season 24 of Diablo, let's say if it happens if you starter set, I don't know what the starter sets are going to be as of yet because it's still too early. We're probably not going to know maybe until 2.5 weeks from now, roughly. They said it's going to be shorter PTB time this time around because they want to have a fast turnover rate between this season and next season. Obviously, because the season that's coming up has ethereal items, which unfortunately that's going to be only for the season. You can't take them with you after the season's over, which kind of kills the allure for that season for me personally. But obviously, they're rushing to get Season 24 Diablo out because it's supposed to correlate with the release of Diablo 2 Resurrected. So there's a lot of Diablo 2 type of lore and esque things going on in Diablo 3 Season 24 for that. So that's why there's a quick turnaround. So let's say Horde of 90 Savages ends up being like the Hadron's Gift, and you're going to be playing this as a seasonal character. What's the first thing you really should do with this? Obviously, you want all the pieces of Horde and the 90 Savages, and then try to get optimization, that being like getting the crit hit chance you need in the helm and everything that I mentioned in the gloves, and then 15% frenzy wherever possible. The first thing you want to do is you're going to want to constantly roll for swords. I would actually recommend doing a whole bunch of bounties, using your follower with the Sage's set to get as many death breaths as possible. I would recommend just focusing on swords, getting your swords, and then just upgrading the rares, because you'll probably have a better chance of seeing the Bastion Rever drop that way for that particular weapon, as opposed to just doing a whole bunch of Nephilim and Greater Rifts. In my experience, trying to get a Bastion's Rever to drop in Diablo 3 for the Barbarian class is extremely difficult. In fact, it's probably better to actually just get the swords and upgrade them to rare. I know it's a lot of resources that you're going to have to burn through, but in terms of speed, ironically, this is one of the few times, guys, where I'm going to tell you that it's more efficient from a speed perspective to just burn through a lot of resources and then get the Bastions Rever that way. On top of that, while you're rolling for swords, you obviously will have also a good chance of getting your Little Rogue and Slander, which you're going to need for the set anyway. Remember, you want a cube Bastion's Rever. Bastion's Rever, if I remember correctly, is a two-handed sword. So definitely, that's something you don't want to usually equip to a Barbarian. Barbarians tend to like using the two-handed sword weapons. So definitely cube Bastion's Rever, and then use Little Rogue and Slander as your weapons of choice. Two-handed weapons, obviously. You get double the chance to put 2 flawless green emeralds on it. I know this will probably come up in the comments, but I'm just pushing really for more attack stat at the moment. This is not like me trying to optimize the armor. If you want to optimize the armor fully, on your helmet, you probably use a flawless purple gem, which I believe is Amuset, if I remember correctly. On your breastplate, you would probably want like 3 flawless rubies. On your pants, you could put, if you want, some Forns topaz. If not, you could put pretty much more flawless rubies on that as well. Me, as you can see here, I'm just going straight on attack. The weapons, you always want to put the flawless green emeralds on them because it gives you 130% increased critical hit damage. And as I mentioned before, with critical hit damage, very, very, very vital to get that, invest in that, because the more critical hits you do, more damage you do. Why would you never want to be able to do more potential damage? That just sounds silly to me. Yet there's some people who disagree with me going for that route. You know, again, it's like, when it comes to Diablo 3, I had an interesting question that came up in the comments. What's the fastest way to get and make the set? Diablo 3, if you're playing it to just make a really broken build and do it super fast, it doesn't work that way. That was a clear minute of 3 minutes and 52 seconds. Unfortunately, it got cut off in the editing stage because I button mashed there, but I did definitely check to see what the time was on that, guys, so sorry about that. Right now we're doing a Greater Rift 80 because I know somebody's probably saying, well, can this do past Torment 16 with ease? Yes, it can. Keep in mind, when you get into the Greater Rifts of plus 80, one of the things, again, you're going to still be going Wrath of the Berserker and then just chucking Frenzy around on every target, but this is going to be much more important here. You're going to want to get a large area of mobs near you, particularly elite packs, and then that's when you're going to be using your Threatening Roar, Threatening Shouts to increase the amount of damage that your Frenzy is doing. So when you get higher up in the Greater Rifts, it's vital that you don't waste your Threatening Shouts and you don't waste your Battle Cries in particular. You want to save them for very tanky targets. Tanky targets are always going to be, case in point here, the elite packs. I should shout right about here, and then you see they're going to automatically pop. If I don't shout and I'm just going regular Frenzy, it's going to take a lot longer to get these particular enemies to implode. So that's why we do it that way. On top of that, when you get to the Rift Guardian, it's going to be one of the situations where you have to make sure that you have your shout available to you. Preferably, you'd also like to have your Wrath of the Berserker available so that you could just go ham on that Rift Guardian. But here is when you got to kind of micromanage your shouts and your Wrath of the Berserkers. Case in point, I saved the Wrath of the Berserker for when I saw that there was going to be a elite pack on screen. That way I can automatically implode them. Now, like I mentioned before, if you've been a long-time viewer of the channel and you watch the Diablo 3 videos, obviously thanks for watching, giving your continued support, liking, sending comments, whatnot, and so forth. Always keep them coming. Whether you have a constructive criticism feedback in one of the videos that you see here or it's something positive, I always like to engage. I always respond back to comments, so that's not really something that I always like to respond back to everybody that gives their feedback and their opinions and whatnot. So if you in particular have like a build of Horde of the 90 Savages that looks somewhat different from this particular build, or you feel that there's a way that maybe I overlooked some sort of optimization here, keep in mind, like I said, every build that you see on this channel is a work in progress. It is not necessarily a fully finished result because I do play games on the channel. If you've been following around or you're new to the channel, we play Diablo 3. We also play Dead by Daylight on the PC now, which we just recently started doing that thanks to, like I mentioned before, the brand new gaming laptop that we have. We also do Monster Hunter Rise videos, and every once in a while I will cover some wrestling games. Unfortunately, wrestling games have had a little bit of drought with not too many good content updates with that. Maybe that's going to change now with WWE 2K22 dropping, because that's actually going to be available on PC as well, so we could just get it on PC as opposed to waiting for, like, hopefully it to come out on, like, the Switch and then having to get a next-gen console. So, as you saw there, we saved the Threatening Shout and just went Frenzy, and also we're in Wrath of the Berserker. That's what you want to do with Greater Rift 80 plus Rift Guardians there. Usually, like I said, when it comes to Horde of 90 Savages, if you follow this particular way that I have this armor set up, as you see, look, even when you're fully buffed, that's 5,000 plus damage that we're able to deal out attack-wise. So you could just rip through things to shreds. Particularly, you have to have Bastion's Rever though in your Ice Cube in order to do it. But if you follow particularly the way I have this armor set up, you should be able to do this exactly the way you saw on screen without really any optimization, maybe like 1 or 2 optimizations at most. Fully augmented, oh god, you would be able to steamroll through this in like a minute, guys. I will leave in the description a link to this set build, a sample build, and you can kind of look at it on paper and see exactly how you would like to optimize it, or ideally how particular players like to optimize it, because I know there are some people who are not as visual and don't necessarily really work very well at seeing things on the screen playing out and prefer to see stuff on paper. So that's definitely going to be available in the description. As you see here, Greater Rift 83 minutes and 16-second clear time. Honestly, my recommendation, I prefer this armor over even the Wrath of the Waste. I think you don't need to invest as much in terms of resources and augmentation to be able to do super high Greater Rifts, because that's just how powerful. I honestly think that this is an armor that the Diablo 3 community just kind of overlooks, because Whirlwind Barbarians just hold in one button and spin all the way to the exit gate and kill the Rift Guardian thing. So if you want a little bit more thinking and, you know, a little bit more active, and you prefer a little bit more melee combat for your particular Diablo characters, this is definitely the way to go in terms of Barbarian. I can't highly recommend it enough to some of you guys out there. Like, if you've only played Whirlwind Barbarian, give this a try, because you're going to have a fantastic time. Maybe even you'll probably decide to ditch Whirlwind Barbarian even, perhaps. So, alright, unfortunately, we didn't get any good loot here. That's going to do it for today's episode. As always, a like is greatly appreciated. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, consider doing so, as it helps the channel grow. Till next time.